Hungary is the sick person of European Union, I would say. The Hungarian government is very close to Vladimir Putin, the dictator of Russia. I think that's one of the key problems, and they are importing some of the policies of Russia. In terms of drug policies, in February last year, the Prime Minister launched the so-called war on drugs in Hungary. This resulted in a lot of young people who use drugs being arrested, more than 10,000 a year, and they wrote into the constitution that it is illegal to use, distribute and promote drugs. And then they restricted the criminal code, and from the autumn, from something like September, they started to have raids against music clubs. When they come to a party, they surround this place and they check everyone's pulse and pupils for if they use drugs, and then they take people in handcuffs to the police station and they have to give urine samples.
On leash, sometimes.
Yeah, on leash.
And on one island, an empty island, they had an illegal rave party. The police went out and arrested everybody and handcuffed everybody and put them in the boats in the Danube and carried them with handcuffed inside the boat, like lying there or sitting there. And if they were fearing for their life.
We organized a protest in front of the Hungarian parliament. If they want to push the dance culture outside to the margins, then we will bring it to the center, you know. If they want to occupy our spaces, then we will reoccupy our spaces, public and civic spaces. And we used the form of protest, which is not the traditional form, but dance. From this protest, people went home with something they gained, you know, some positivity, some hope and joy. So that was different for them. It was a kind of collective healing experience for them. Myself, I feel that my 16 years of life was stolen from me. I hope we could also contribute to the dismantling of this system.
So I really hope that this nightmare is going to be over and we can build up again a democratic society.
For more than 20 years, Péter Sárosi and István Gábor Takács have been the eyes and the ears of the global drug policy movement. Through their video activism with Drugreporter and the Rights Reporter Foundation, they've documented every major milestone and interviewed the most influential figures in the field. They have been our open door to the world of drug policy reform. But with the upcoming elections in Hungary, it was time to turn the tables. At this year's CND in Vienna, I sat down with them to talk about their story and the critical situation in their home country. Who are these two, and what is really happening in Hungary?
Hello, István and Péter, and thank you so much for letting me interview you. Can I ask you, maybe Péter first, who are you?
Thank you, Arild, for this opportunity. It's not many times that I'm sitting on the other side of the camera at the CND, so
It's about time.
We are not used to this question, but yeah, it's a relevant question. So we are activists and filmmakers from Hungary. We are based in Budapest, and we have this very small NGO. It's called the Rights Reporter Foundation. It's two of us, basically. I am a historian. I was graduated as a historian, and I became a human rights defender or activist after university. I joined the cannabis reform movement in Hungary.
What year was this?
Sorry?
What year was this?
This year was 2002, 2003. And then I joined the Hungarian Civil Liberties Union, which was a human rights organization, one of the leading human rights organizations in Hungary. And then we separated from the HCLU, the Hungarian Human Rights Organization, in 2015, and we created our own organization, and that's called the Rights Reporter Foundation. And we have a website which is, I think, pretty well known in drug policy circles. That's called the Drugreporter.
Yeah.
And we have contents like videos and articles in 3 languages: English, Russian, and Hungarian. So that is it in a nutshell.
I'm the other half of Drugreporter. My name is István. Péter is a historian and I'm a psychologist, so I also don't have much to do with actual filmmaking, but this is what I've been doing in the last 20 years. I graduated as a psychologist, and then I totally accidentally ended up working at the Hungarian Civil Liberties Union. One of my friends worked there, and I wanted to move away from home, and I was looking for some money here and there. I worked at multiple places while at the university. But I really liked what I saw at the HCIU about harm reduction, so that's where I learned it. And there I had the opportunity to go to Frankfurt for 3 months to live in a house, which was a supported house for methadone patients. And I worked there in a needle exchange, so I kind of learned a lot about harm reduction there in Frankfurt. And then I took home some needles to Budapest because they didn't use those needles that go back when you shoot. They didn't like it. So I took some needles, a whole pack, and I took it down to the needle exchange in Budapest. And there they said, it's great that you have this and just stay and work here. And then I started working at the needle exchange for 5 years there. And then I started, after graduation, I started working with Péter at the drug policy program at the HCIU. And there, in 2007, I had the opportunity to take a 2-week-long course in Montreal about filming. So I knew nothing about filming, so I went there and I learned it. And then together we started coming to these events, these conferences, and then it happened that there was such a demand for it, and I guess we did a good job, that ever since, for almost 20 years, this is what we're doing, and I specialized on filming and editing and filming, so that's what we do together.
Thank you. Why is video activism so important?
Yeah, well, now everyone can make movies. 20 years ago when we started, it was with the appearance of YouTube, it became much more easier to communicate with your own videos. And before that, we were using the traditional methods of activism, like sending out reports, writing PDFs, and waiting for big TV companies to come to us, and then maybe they say, they use 8 seconds of what you want to say. But then in 2006, with the possibility of internet uploads, you could immediately produce your own video content. So that's when we started to do this. And a lot of people watch these films, much more people than who read our reports, which are also very important. But then we have to incorporate this kind of communication tool into our broader advocacy spectrum. And it's really effective. People can identify more with these. You can tell stories, which are always much better to touch people's hearts when you want to talk about harm reduction or drug policy reform, for example.
Why do you think it's so important, your video activism?
Yeah, when we started this filming in 2007-8, then this was pretty new thing. So we were the only one who did this in this drug policy field, and especially when we came to the CND, we were almost kicked out from the CND because they were not used to, like civil society and camera. We were very suspicious. Nowadays it's not so unique what we do. So there are other organizations who are trying to do their own movies, and we live in the era of many kind of social media channels. So it's not so much innovative anymore. But still, I think this is a very good way to substitute your other types of advocacy. So that's why we also train people to do this. So István has a multi-day training to train activists how to use the camera, how to edit programs. It's not so difficult to do this, and I wouldn't say that it is the most effective way of advocacy. But for example, here I talked to many people who were introduced to, for example, the CND, the Commission on Narcotic Drugs, through our movies, and these short documentaries, they can give you a sense and an insight what is this place, which probably if you just go to the United Nations website, you will not get it. You have sometimes the most interesting conversations in the corridors of these big conferences and big meetings like this one. And we kind of, we try to catch this kind of corridor information. We are not a news channel, we are not like reporting about only what's happening here, but we're asking people to comment. How do you feel about it? What does it make you think? And I think that's that kind of background information. It's very interesting for many people. So it's like more than just about what's happening in the official level, and that's what we do in other conferences like International Harm Reduction Conference and other types of big conferences. that we spend most of our time in the corridors of these conferences, and we talk to people, and we ask them to tell their stories, and also sometimes personal stuff is coming up during these interviews, which is always interesting, emotions and all this stuff, which is more interesting sometimes than what's happening inside of these rooms.
I've been around for a few decades, and you have always been around, and you documented so many important for us happenings. How do you survive? What do you have enough money? Do you have any support? I know you're very recognized in the drug policy era, the drug reform movement, but do they support you? Do the movement support you or take you for granted? Leading question.
Yeah, for a long time we were maybe spoiled a little bit because we were funded by the Open Society Foundations for a long time, and that was a kind of core funding and good coverage. That's not the case at the moment, so it's much harder to get funding for this type of work. It isn't very likely that they take it for granted because we're always everywhere, and so far we managed to do it. But it's much harder to try to get funding for each of the micro projects that we're doing, because we can never ask the same price for the actual work, how much it costs us. So we're using up our reserves at the moment. So the way we can get our funding is definitely not through the video work, because it's more costly than how much we could ask for. So we are trying to work and get funding from European Union projects. A huge part of our funding right now is micro donations in Hungary, which is not the international work. That's based mostly on Péter's work on the Hungarian Facebook page, which has like 87 or so thousand followers, and he's writing daily about all kinds of things, not just drug policy, and he's doing it really good. And on that we could build a micro donation system for the Hungarian activities. We haven't really tried that for the international work. Maybe that's going to be another step, try to get some micro funding from all these people who come to these conferences.
But when you say micro funding,
like €5, €10 a month.
Yeah.
Yeah, like really small donations from a couple hundred people. Because we don't need that many people to just donate €10 a month. That's a coffee. But if you get 1,000 people, that's a significant contribution to our work.
What's the ultimate situation for you financially?
Yeah, like István said, this micro donation part is increasing now. So I think if we are continuing to improve our funding base, let's say, our supporters, the group of those people who are supporting us, then we will be able to at least to have this as a core funding, because usually when you are applying for a big European Union grant or some big donors, then it's very limited how you can use it, and it's a lot of administrative burden with it. But with this kind of micro donations, that is the best form of funding, because you can use it in an unlimited way, and you don't need to report. Or of course you need to report to your supporters, but they are supporting you for what is your mission, and I think sometimes there are these donor-driven organizations that are going where the funding is, and we try to follow a different strategy, that we have something we believe in, and we try to ask people to fund that activity.
And I think our model is kind of unique in many ways. First, in the sense that we are like a very, 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 very small film studio, that we actually produce all kind of varieties of films, like from reels to 10-episode long documentary series, from long discussions to short format to animation. And it's basically the two of us who's doing that, and that's actually costs much less than having a big studio. One thing is that because we're a small studio, the other one is that we're working in a very cooperative way, like cooperating with all the other NGOs and kind of attaching to their works and supporting wherever we can. And that one way that that helps them, so it helps you when you want to show the world about Hüsebergen. Then we go there and film with you, and you already have a boost in your acknowledgements, and the more people see it. So that's a good way that we can come to you, and then produce together something which is good for you. But it's also good for our model, because then basically our resources are almost endless. We have a lot of allies who are doing their good things, so we can come and film about that. And then we have the Drugreporter website, which is like the hub that collects all this, and we have all the films there. We produced more than 1,000 videos in the last 20 years already.
And you know, most of our work, or some part of our work, is always invisible for some of the people, because for you, for example, you know our international work mostly. Yeah. But you don't know much about what we do in the country level. We are doing a lot, so it's like there is this international branch. We are doing things at international conferences, but that also has a lot of directions. Like we go to psychedelic conference, we go to CND, we go to the harm reduction conference. So it's like a lot of different fields where we work, and then we also do a lot of things in Hungary, which is not strictly connected to filming, but for example, connected to local level, city level drug coordination and advocacy campaigns, which I can speak about in detail later.
What keeps you motivated, and why is drug policy so important for you? And what kind of drug policy do you want?
Actually, it's not easy to be motivated for the same cause for more than 20 years. That's to tell it first. That, you know,
it's
sometimes you need other things to work with. So we also have other issues. You know, we are. Sometimes we have like this hobby fields, like István likes to go to concerts and record some alternative or jazz concerts. Or I also have different things like meditation. So I think it's important to find something else in your life, because if you are only working on the same issue for so many years, you can burn out. Yeah. And that's what we see, I think, in our field many times, that people are burning out, especially there is a lot of stress in this field, and you have to learn how to deal with the fact that you don't see immediate results if you work with drug policy. Sometimes it's a multi-generational struggle, so what you are sowing today, maybe someone else will harvest in like 20 years. You don't know. And it's not the field where you can have very easy and immediate success. So, but at the same time, drug policy is such a diverse and complex issue and field that it has a lot of disciplines, you know, like from anthropology to psychiatry to, I don't know, sociology. So many different aspects of this field, and that keeps me fascinated. Actually, that, you know, I always learn something new myself. It's not that you are in this field and nobody can teach me anything new, but I always learn something new, and making interviews with people is a very good way to learn from people and keep me also in this state of curiosity, you know, like this openness that, I want to learn new things about something, or maybe I can look at the things which I know a lot about from a different perspective of a different person. So I think that's one way I can explain you how I could kept being motivated.
If you ask about my motivation, I think all my life something that really pissed me off was injustice, and if I saw that people are being hurt, I'm really sensitive to that, people being hurt. And in this field, that's what you see all the time. And if we can do a little bit against that, or mitigate the harm, or reduce this kind of suffering, not necessarily caused by drugs, but caused by people to each other, then if we contributed to that, that's a huge thing for me. I mean, if my life was about that, and we could a tiny bit influence other people to fight against this kind of system that we have now, then I really lived a worthy life. I always think about this whole drug policy system like if we were living in medieval times and we were sitting here and talking about the best practices of burning witches, and you would hear those people like they were talking about like which is the best wood that you can use to burn this type of witch and that type of, and the effectiveness and the evidence base of burning witches. And then, you know, because that's evidence based, if you burn them there will be less witches. And then having other people who say that maybe there are no witches and supporting them, and that's a kind of brave thing to do. And for me, that's a life calling in a way. And this whole system is like that, like really humiliating, hurting, and murdering people for taking this type of drug, and rewarding and patting people in their back for taking the other type of drug. It's completely insane. So like it's kind of fighting against a really, really insane system. And I think that always keeps me motivated to do something around it. And that doesn't mean that there's no room for control. Of course there is some room for control, but like sensible control that respects people's human rights and dignity. And I think what we're doing is always somewhere around human dignity. And it's a kind of like a humanist work that we're doing with Péter, to treat people as humans and not as subjects or items or something to be controlled. But this kind of humanitizing narrative. So what we're doing is trying to promote a narrative that is about love and humans and human connection and getting together instead of being against each other. So this kind of narrative, and in all our films, that's the narrative, to lift up people instead of pushing them down. I think that's the main idea of what we're doing in all the 5,000 articles and 1,000 videos and everything that we do. And if you ask about what can be that system, is probably, in my understanding, creating systems where people can enjoy themselves in the safest possible way, the way they want, and then giving them enough information to do that the safest they can, with certain types of drugs if that's their choice. And to make some kind of regulation that allows people to do that the safest way. And that's possible. You can do that with nicotine to an extent. You can do that with alcohol, with coffee. You could do that with all the other drugs in some way, because people want to use them and they do use them. So then you have to have some kind of system that allows them to do that the best way they can protect themselves and not hurt them for doing it.
Thank you. Do you have an alternative perspective than the actors you're usually interviewing, because you come kind of from the side and ask them, so maybe you have a different kind of position at the area, or would you say that? But because you are an active drug policy actor,
That's
but
true.
also you're a video activist.
Yeah, it's different. There are different roles. You know, when I'm sitting as a reporter position, I don't want to, force my opinion to anyone or to debate with someone. I just ask questions. I want to give them the possibility or the opportunity to explain themselves what they believe in. But when I work as an activist, for example, I speak at a session or I am interviewed, for example, by other people, then I can speak about how and why I find some drug policies better than the others. And yes, even I think in the drug policy reform movement there are different views and different perspectives on how to do this, or even there are local situations, and I think not everything that works in a country can work in another country. So.
But what is your view? Could we call you a drug liberals?
I guess yes.
In Hungary, the government always calls us the drug liberalizators, or whatever it's in English. So that people who are libertarians in drug issues, which is not true actually, because we believe in regulation. We need to regulate these substances. I don't believe that we need to create a system what was the system with tobacco in the mid 20th century, where tobacco products could be advertised for kids. So I think, yes, we need strict limits. So we have to acknowledge that, yes, we have to provide people access to these substances. At the same time, these substances have specific risks. And the government also have a responsibility to deal with those or manage these risks. And we also need to protect those people who are not using. And I think their rights are not contradictory to the people's rights who use drugs. And we have to explain people that this is not the case, because I think many people believe that by protecting or by advocating for the rights of people who use drugs, we are just working for a small minority of society, while we are neglecting the interests and the rights of the majority of the societies. For example, here yesterday at the session, a guy was shouting that your right to use drugs is not more than the children's rights to be protected from drugs. So that's his interpretation. I think it's false. It's a false paradigm that in order to kids to be protected, you don't need to restrict people's right to use drugs. And I have a kid myself, and I don't think that if I would be arrested for smoking a joint, that would be very beneficial for my kid. So I don't think that's. Yes, of course, my kid. I want my kid to have some very good education in school, drug education, and some maybe very effective prevention interventions. And I want her not to be able to buy alcohol or drugs until she reaches adulthood. But I don't think that the rights of adult people to use the substance or put the substance into their own body without not disturbing anyone else, that it is harmful in any way to the society. And I think when we are protecting this right, we are working for the whole society, and not only a small group. So it's because this current prohibition system is bad for the whole society, and it's not only bad for those people who use drugs. And that's another misunderstanding we have to correct in the society, and that's why we think public education is so important, because we have to educate people. They don't know this. Like as István said, in the Middle Ages, people believed in witches, and they believed that all their problems are caused by witches, and now they think that their problems are caused by people who use drugs. But it is not. They don't realize that they are the key to the problem, and not the problem, but they are the solution to the problem, and that's for the benefit of the whole society.
So what's happening in Hungary right now? I'm quite amazed by, I see you in the media, you're writing a lot of articles, you have this protest dance. So for us outside of Hungary, what happened?
Hungary is the sick person of European Union, I would say. From the 27 member states, Hungary is the member states with the most problems, I think, because the Hungarian government is very close to Vladimir Putin, the dictator of Russia. I think that's one of the key problems, and they are importing some of the policies of Russia, social policies. They are very socially conservative.
Okay, but you say socially, so socially, drug policy, what kind of?
Drug policy, LGBTQ issues, gender issues, and also by scapegoating civil society. So that is a Russian import, that they try to cut the funding, international funding from NGOs who are criticizing the government, and they claim that NGOs have no right to be involved in public affairs because they are not elected, and that's again a misconception, because I believe that policy and politics, which is the noble sense of the Greek word, the affairs of the polis, the community, they are the concern for each and every citizen, and we are organizing ourselves into organizations, and we have a right to participate in public life. But Orbán's model, which he builds in Hungary now, it is like politics is a privilege of a small class of elected politicians, and he also kind of destroys the checks and balances of the rule of law in Hungary, and also controlling the free media, and also there is I wouldn't even say corruption, because corruption is, when people are stealing something from the public money, but in Hungary I would say it's a kleptocracy. It's a system of how you can get rich from public money. Sometimes it's even legal, so they create, the laws to make it legal what they do. But we know that it's a very small circle of around the prime minister who gets incredibly, unbelievably rich, and most other people just don't enjoy this rich, and we feel that we are just getting further and further from Europe and closer to the east, to Russia and China. And we as an NGO, we believe in those principles that are currently under attack in Hungary, so we are also under attack ourselves.
And then he imposed a new drug law, is that right?
In terms of drug policy, so that's about Hungary in general, and then drug policy, in February last year, the Prime Minister launched the so-called war on drugs in Hungary, and he appointed a new drug commissioner. And they intensified law enforcement practices against drug traffickers, but mostly this resulted in a lot of young people who use drugs being arrested, thousands, like maybe more than 10,000 a year. And they also amended the constitution of Hungary, and they wrote into the constitution that it is illegal to use, distribute and promote drugs, which had a chilling effect, like, okay, so it's illegal to promote drugs. Does harm reduction count as promoting drugs? And then they restricted the criminal code, and that means that there are now harsher sanctions for drug use and drug offenses. And from the autumn, from something like September, they started to have raids against music clubs. And also they created a new decree that is allowing the police to shut down music clubs for 3 months if they suspect that they have anything to do with drug trafficking. And sometimes it's enough one confession from one offender that they say that, yes, I bought drugs in this place, and then they shut it down. And several of these clubs were shut down, and there is a fear. Also, there were musicians who were raided by the police, and we thought that, we have to do something against this, because now a lot of people are in fear, and we have to do something against this fear. So we organized a protest in front of the Hungarian parliament. If they want to push the dance culture outside to the margins, then we will bring it to the center, If they want to occupy our spaces, then we will reoccupy our spaces, public and civic spaces. And we used the form of protest, which is not the traditional form, but dance. Dancing is like about autonomy of the person and bodily autonomy. It is kind of embodied form of self-expression, and it is also very adequate way for a protest in this context, because they are banning dance clubs, so we are protesting with dance. So we had this dancing rave protest. And now we also have the second one in the end of February, and thousands of young people joined this protest. There were maybe 4,000 were in the last 4,000, which is, if you consider that there is such a big fear among young people, and I've heard a lot of feedback. I don't go because I'm afraid of the police. It's not a bad number, especially in a small country like Hungary with 10 million people. And we also organized it in other cities now, so in 3 other cities. So it became kind of national protest movement now. Actually, we were also inspired, I have to confess that we were inspired by the Georgian rave movement, which happened in 2018. And they had a similar problem with police, and they were also organizing some rave protests. So it was not our own genuine idea, but we had our inspiration from similar movements.
Even though how could you organize this, and reach out to so many people?
The great part about this whole movement is that volunteers are doing it, because basically Péter woke up one morning and he said, I'm fed up with this, and he wrote on Facebook like, who wants to help us do a protest, and then in a few days 1,000 people applied in the Google form that they want to help. And out of that we found the best people who actually know how to organize protests, who have a company that organizes these dance events, people who work with the volunteers, really great graphic designers. So we got together this volunteer group, and we have like these signal groups, and we communicate with them.
So we had a good team.
So we had a great team, and they put all their work for free in it, and we asked for micro donations again. There's like 1,000 forints, like €5, 5,000 forints, 10 euros, if you want this to work. And we managed to get 3 million forints, which is something like 6,000 euros or something like that.
So so it was completely crowdfunded event. So we didn't get any funding from institutional donors or nothing like that. It was the people who paid for this.
That's amazing, and you didn't strike me as a rave party persons, and it was so.
Actually, I am.
You are?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I grew up in this kind of rave. I mean, even in university, I started to go to these rave parties, and I go to. There is a big festival in Hungary. It's called Ozora. It's a trance festival. So I like electronic music. So it's not alien from me. And I have a radio show in Tilos Radio, which is also kind of hotbed for electronic music culture in Hungary. So I'm close to that culture. So that's why we organized this with this underground techno music, because I am close to these people. I know these people, these DJs and things, and it was much easier to organize this. I wouldn't have a clue how to organize a jazz event or I don't know, about tango or whatever. So it's like that's where I feel at home, and that's where my friends feel at home. So that's how we could organize that.
So what was the media reaction, the police and the government, and what do you think is the impact of these protests?
First, we were quite disappointed by the press coverage, which was not very good. Mm-hmm. But we learned from some of the mistakes.
About not very good?
There were some very let's say high-profile papers which did not cover the protest at all, and we were like, "Oh, so you are reporting about the government's drug war almost every day, and then you don't come when young people are dancing against this shit?" So I was pissed off. Actually, the planning, there was some problems with the planning, because our event happened at the same time when the leader of the opposition and the prime minister had a big happening in the countryside, so the media attention was distracted. But anyway, I also feel in general that the Hungarian media and media in general has a big responsibility in keeping the war on drugs going, where in countries where it is going, because they support this kind of narrative, this very criminalizing narrative, even if they, I mean, I know some journalists who are against criminalizing drug users, but they just adopt the police articles or news without criticism, and they also put this whole issue into this domain of criminalization and crime and dangerous and sensationalist things. So I feel that the media has a big responsibility, and sometimes it's a kind of unintended consequence. They don't intend to be useful for the government propaganda, but they are serving it, and I think it's a big problem. So the second event had a better media coverage, and I think I appeared in television shows, and the television news with the greatest coverage in Hungary came to our protest and reported about it. So we had a good media coverage, I would say.
Were you surprised about that?
No, because I worked a lot on it. we are known for the media, that's true, and but it's also like a work. and that's why also we do this media training. We have apart from doing videos, we also do trainings. We talked about István doing a video advocacy training, and I have also a media advocacy training where we train people how to communicate with the mainstream media. And it's always a struggle for NGOs, for activists, how to work with the media. You have, but you can hate the media or you can love the media, but you have to work with the media. So that's the concept of this training as well. And you have to work in a strategic way, I think. So you have to invest into your relationships with the journalists. So it's not that just you are organizing something and then you are waiting for the media to come to cover it, but you have to prepare it with the media. About the response or reaction, among young people, we had a very, very positive response and feedback, especially those who came, but also those who didn't come, but who like dancing culture and they are interested in nightlife. We had very, very positive reactions. For example, many young people told that, we were so much frustrated with these old types of protest or traditional protest. We go out and then we shout, and in the end we go home frustrated and even angrier than we were. But from this protest, people went home with something they gained, some positivity, some hope and joy. So that was different for them. It was a kind of collective healing experience for them. And I think that even if we don't count what is the impact, like social, political impact, but if we would just have this impact, that people in just few months before the election, very tense, very frustrated, they can have a way to release this tension and aggression and transform this aggression into something positive, then I think I would already be happy. But I think it also had a political impact. So, politics is always a fight for who can rule the public discourse. What are the topics of the public discourse? Who can represent it in what way? And I think by representing this whole problem in our way, we of course we are forming or we are shaping how this issue is discussed in the public, and I think that's effective.
And how did the police react?
The police is a big institution, so those police units that are responsible for waging a war on drugs are different from those policemen who are responsible for maintaining order at public demonstrations. And those people we worked with, they were super nice, and usually I think they do their work very well. But we have a problem with those parts of the police or those activities of the police. When they come to a party, they surround this place and they check everyone's pulse and pupils for if they use drugs, and then they take people in handcuffs to the police station and they have to give urine samples.
On leash, some kind of leash.
Yeah, on leash. And that's very humiliating, and especially if you're in the middle of a party, you are enjoying yourself, and then the police comes and then take you to. That's not how you planned your night. And even if you didn't use any drugs, that you can suffer.
There was also a case when there was an illegal party. People went on the Danube, which is going through Budapest, the river. And there are islands, and on one island, an empty island, they had an illegal rave party, which sometimes is loud, so they could have turned it down. But the police went out and arrested everybody and handcuffed everybody and put them in the boats in the Danube and carried them with handcuffed inside the boat, like lying there or sitting there. And if they were fearing for their life, because if the boat falls over, then they can't swim. So this kind of humiliation and this kind of thing, it's completely unnecessary, and they do it. And I think
Don't risk your life, just this way.
Yeah, just this way. We risk it for you.
It's ironic that they say that they want to keep young people safe and protect their lives, and at the same time they don't really care about anything. I know about young people who needed medical attention, like psychiatric care after these raids, that they couldn't sleep for days, or that just imagine that, especially if you are, for example, on a party drug, and it is just your experience is interrupted, and then you get into a completely different setting, which is really frightening. For example, if you had a psychedelic experience or something, then this can really very harmful psychologically. It can be very harmful, and that shows as well that they are not really interested in young people's health. This is not about genuine concern about young people's well-being. This is just a political display show, you know, for their own rural, mostly older voting base, because they already lost the support of the young people. Among the young people, Orbán's support is very, very low. So most of his voters are in the older cohort of the population, and especially rural people, who are, I mean, among them it can be popular, you know, yeah, we show these young urban people, liberals, that's where their place is, you know. But we hope that this will cost them the election next time, and I hope we could also contribute to the dismantling of this system, because now it's not only, you know, that one government. It's for 16 years they are ruling. It's the longest period in the European Union for any government. It's not a real democracy anymore in Hungary. So if the opposition can win, it's not a fair election. It can win despite the election is unfair. So and I have to tell you that yes, we would like to see this system be dismantled, which Orbán built, and we want to get back to the group of, let's say, ordinary European Union countries. And I'm not speaking about left or right, but just to have the opportunity, at least, you know, to have regular elections.
How do you feel coming from Hungary and meeting people from Norway, Denmark, and other countries?
Normal countries.
Democracies.
Meeting you and meeting our allies here annually and at conferences, it always gives us a lot of energy to keep doing what we're doing back at home. So that's always very good. We get energy from you, and we take it back home. So we always.
How do you feel when you come back home?
Now, there's only 1 month now. So, and normally when we went back home from these conferences, we arrived and there were all these blue posters, and maybe George Soros on them as the enemy, or now Zelensky there as the enemy, taking your money, or you open your Facebook and you see videos, like AI videos of a Hungarian soldier being shot in the head by some German uniform, and they say that this is going to happen if the opposition wins. And there's a girl looking at, like a young girl looking out the window and crying because his Hungarian soldier father was shot in the head by a German uniform. And these kind of AIs that they're producing, and so that adds a lot to our stress level. And they did this from billions and billions of our taxpayer money. So where they ended up now is really insane. So I really hope that in a month this nightmare is going to be over, and we can build up again a democratic society.
Of course, if you come from a country like Hungary, you can't meet with people from normal democracies without a certain envy. You know, that we are envying that you have a situation where that there are consequences of things, because in Hungary is a country without consequences now, so they can do anything actually, or it's like very few things that has a consequence. Like there are so many scandals, you know, publicized by the media. Even a tenth of that scandal would cost a government its ministers, so they would resign or something. And in Hungary there were no consequences.
It happens daily. Like they just robbed the...
That's really exhausting. And I feel that my 16 years of life was stolen from me. And then it's one of the most productive part of my life and our lives. We could be much more useful in a democracy. We could, contribute to a better drug policy in our country. And what we did is we have to just, survive and protect what's left. And this is really frustrating, Like when we started around 2005, 2006, we were writing articles about drug consumption rooms, and the idea was that we're going to the West, and now we're taking all these good practices in, and they are going to happen. And then what happened from 2010 is that we were trying to protect what we already had, which was kind of broken down. So, yeah, we even had together we even had a protest in the beginning, 2006.
when the prosecutor's office said that maybe needle exchange is a crime to give out needles. And then together we did a kind of report. So I went in, on behalf of my organization, I went into the prosecutor's office with a needle and said that I report myself so you can arrest me and let's go to court and let's do that. And then we won. So, and then they wrote in the social law that needle exchange is legal and it's all good. So we had successes then, but that took things forward. But in the last 16 years, we pretty much just tried to protect this needle exchange that they closed down, protect the other needle exchange that was closed down. Péter was working very hard to get some money at the municipality for at least a van that is doing hepatitis screening. And what we have to fight is the Orbánist party attacking that drug strategy and trying to take back that tiny amount of money that is spent on hepatitis C screening. They want to block that. So all they do is block. They put so much energy in negative space that if they use that energy to do at least one thing positive, it would have been so much better. Yeah.
And now we are at the CND 2026, CND 69. Is there any major happenings you want to tell us about? Why are you here? What would you like to document? And what do you think of the development at the international stage?
I would like to tell you, Arild, that this is one of the most interesting CNDs ever, but I couldn't tell you because it's not. I mean, if you look at the agenda and issues discussed here, it's pretty much the same as it was last year or before, so it's not a very special CND this year. That's my feeling. I've been to like 22 CNDs, so I have some basis to compare.
Is this kind of special time internationally in politics?
Well, when it was 2016, you know, the Angus, that a lot of people felt it was a very special time. I don't feel that those expectations were very realistic because not much happened. Yeah. And for example, if you look at the current coca review process, you know that the WHO reviewed coca leaf, and actually they decided to leave it there where it was before. This system is. If it changes very, very slow. So I believe that the real changes are not happening here in Vienna, but at your own country. This is a good platform to deliver your message internationally and also networking and listen and learn from other countries. But to be frank, I'm not very fascinated about the discussions or debates inside of the plenary hall or the committee of the whole. And I'm not sure if those resolutions adopted have a real country-level impact. Maybe in some Asian countries they do, but in most of our countries, for example, have you experienced that a CND resolution had an impact in your country? I don't think so. So it's yes, I think it makes sense to push this system out from its comfort zone, and I think there are organizations like IDPC who are doing it very well. But our task here, I think, is rather to show different perspectives of civil society and also sometimes governments to educate people at home about the developments, international developments. We just interviewed the Czech National Drug Coordinator about what's happening in Czech Republic. So this event, it gives us a lot of opportunity for excellent interviews. And now, because it's a kind of international conference with the side events, which is again not the official part, but the side events, that's much more interesting, I think. So you can go to side events, meet with wonderful activists, learn from developments from Nordic countries. So that can be very inspiring. So I like that part.
Why do you think it's important for civil society to go to the CND?
This became one of the largest international conferences with the side events. So in itself, if you want to learn about drug policies around the world, it's worth coming here if you have the budget, and you can also meet different types of NGOs and governments. You can do networking here. But just to come to the plenary and listen to the official speeches, I wouldn't recommend anyone to come here.
Also, it's a communication opportunity about this whole system. So you can come here and talk at home about what's the problem with it. We did a protest, when was it, 2009? When the international drug control system was 50 years old. And we organized a huge protest outside, and we twisted it around. So we created this fictional organization called Drug Lords International, which was kind of like a group of drug dealer, big mafia. And we hired actors to send video messages to the CND members, thanking them for prohibition and for keeping us the system, because they are the only beneficiaries of it. And then we took those actors here, and in front of the entrance, they welcomed all the delegates with like champagne, and they said, "Come, here's heroin that we sell, and I know you smoke my mota." And they were really funny, and we recorded that, and you can still find that on Drug Reporter. So there is an opportunity to do buzz around global drug policy still. And I was telling Péter yesterday, would I do it again, that kind? And I was thinking, probably not me, because we've been doing this for a long time. And but if young people would have the new energy to do it, they could still do that. It would still be very relevant. Maybe at another 50 years, well, hopefully not 50, but maybe in the 20 years. So if there's an occasion, so there's still a lot of things that can be done here. And also what I see, I only came here since 2008 or 9. But I do see a change. So when we first came here, it was the director of UNODC shouting at the NGOs, like, "We're not debating here, it's not a debating society, and prohibition is great." And they were chasing us around here in these corridors, these policemen, and they didn't want us to film. And now we are much more respected, and the whole talk, there's time to time there's much more talk about harm reduction and human rights. And so it's like this, depending pretty much on where the United States is standing. And now the United States is stepping back again. Hopefully they will come back to the normal, they will come back to their senses. Yeah.
Well, thank you. And I want to take the opportunity to thank you for your work. We do a lot of things around the world, but you are documenting it. No one would know a lot of what the drug policy movement, the drug user organizations, what the actors, the founders, you are documenting it so that people will never forget. And I hope that more people support you and show the appreciation that you deserve. Thank you so much, Drug Reporter.